So my name is Bubba Stallcup, and for those of you that don't know me, and I'm not going to assume that everybody does know me because I don't know a lot of you guys. But my name is Bubba Stallcup. I'm one of the founders here at Love Thy Nerd. And like Chris said, we've been in this game for about 6-ish years in some way, shape, or form, whether it was here with LTN or on our own or with Game Church or wherever. This is what we have been working up to. Like everybody else in our life, everybody else in the world, every moment in your life has led to this point. And for us, it happens to be up here telling you how we got to the place that we are. Everything in your life has led up to this point where you're sitting here listening to us tell you what led us to this point. It might not make sense now, but I hope that you can take something away from what we do here this weekend and take it back home and be intentional with the people that are in your direct sphere of influence. Because as the Global Leadership Summit likes to say, everybody has influence, but we like to say that not everybody should. I have been in full-time church ministry, staff, whatever you want to call it, for over a decade. Like, my life has been church. I am so excited to not have to go to the church at 6 a.m. tomorrow and to be here with you guys. Like, that just speaks to my soul. I've been this nerdy missionary for about 6 years intentionally. I've got a beautiful wife and 3 kids that were supposed to be here by now, but no, Siri, not you. They were supposed to be here by now, but they're on their way. You'll meet them later. And one of the most exciting things that's going on in my life right now is that as of Monday, this past Monday, I am full-time with Love Thy Nerd. So, thank you. Thank you. That's a big deal for me. It really is, because, like I said, church has been my life. Specifically, church has been my life for over a decade. But my heart has always been here. The things that I did at the church allowed me to understand how to better love and serve my nerdy neighbors, even when we didn't have that phrase, which we labored over for like a long time before we landed on it. I think we did 2 or 3 trips before we figured that out. And man, it's a lot easier now that we have something to say. But I want to talk to you guys specifically about intentional community. And one of my favorite words in any language is the word koinonia. And we have a room in our church that's named the Koinonia Room because that room means intentional fellowship. Like, I'm going to go out of my way to spend time with people in this room. People call it the koinonia room, the koinonono. Like, they can't say it. But it doesn't matter if you can say it or not. What matters is, do you know what it means? Do you understand what it is that we're trying to portray with this word koinonia? And that word comes up for the first time in Greek in Acts chapter 2. And if you know anything about the early church, people always want to be we want to be in Acts church, an Acts 2 church. Everybody's always talking about that. And nobody really understands what it means to get there because there's a lot of sacrifice involved in being an Acts 2 church. But I want you guys to know that right now, by being here, by being at LTN Con, in this room right now, you are engaging in koinonia, intentional fellowship. You went out of your way to be here when you guys could have been anywhere else. I mean, honestly, to be fair, you could still be out there playing games. Like, nobody has forced you to come into this room, but you are engaging in intentional fellowship. And that's huge. A lot of Jesus' ministry, and really even that of the apostles, is done through intentionality. If you think about it, not very many things just kind of happen. Like, a situation might happen, but then they have to choose what are they going to do in that moment with the information that they've been given. So, a couple of examples. Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch. Okay, so they're walking down the road and yada, yada, yada. Here somebody sees the thing. He could have just kept walking and not done anything, but he intentionally walked over to the eunuch to explain to him. And that guy ends up getting baptized, saves his whole house. It's like a big deal for that eunuch's family. And we don't even know what the ramifications going forward of that were, other than we're talking about it right now. But intentionally, he walked over and did the thing and then teleported. It's a really cool story. You should check it out. Matt mentioned this earlier, Jesus and the Samaritan woman at the well. Like, this is a big deal. Like, it's huge that Jesus intentionally went up to that woman and then intentionally turned around and wrote in the dirt. Like, it's everything that he did in that moment and leading up to that and even past that was very, very intentional. Jesus did not take a step without thinking about it. We may think, oh, things just kind of happen and he's Jesus and the world just moves around him. He knows what he's doing. He moves with intentionality, and we are called to be just like Jesus. So when we don't move with intentionality, we're not moving in the way that God has called us to move. Intentionality. And then, the last one, speaking really with cultural relevance, like Paul goes and he speaks about the statue of the unknown God. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that story, but he's looking around and there's an empty slot, and they say, this is the statue to the unknown God. And he says, let me tell you about that God. The one that you set up an altar to, but you don't know who you're worshiping. You think you're covering all your bases. This is the one you really need to know. And so he uses an empty slot that was not designed for that intentionally to tell people, this is the one that you've been missing the whole time. So we see these intentional acts of ministry really all over Scripture. And to me, I really feel like the gospel is way more effective when we move intentionally. If you think about Genesis, the very beginning of why we are here, if Genesis never happens, we don't exist, okay? So Genesis chapter 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It goes on to say, let us make man in our own image. And that's a thing that a lot of Christians just go right past, right? We don't want to really deal with that. It's kind of weird. It's almost polytheistic because we don't want to get into the minutia of what that is. But the fact of the matter is that God at his core is community. When we talk about God is love and love is God, that's community. At the very beginning, it was community. Don't miss that. Don't forget about that. So when we seclude ourselves, when we go away and we don't be around other people that love and share the same interest that we have, then what we do is we actually are saying that that's not important, when it really is. It was so important that God started everything with that, everything with community. So God himself is a communal being, and the gospel, I promise you, is way more effective in community. That's why, Matt even mentioned it earlier. You use a lot of my material. I'm not super happy about it. You should have read this when I wrote it an hour ago. But seriously though, we send people out. We send people out in at least groups of 2. Because there is that power in the community. It's, hey, if I'm standing on a chair and you're pulling me down and I'm trying to pull you up, it really just depends on how many people are on the other side. There is a big deal about community, not just being around people that believe the same way, but also being around people that are going to act communally. So in the early church, in Acts chapter 2, we talk about giving all of your stuff up, selling everything you have and giving it to the poor. And if there's anybody in need, don't worry about what the health insurance is, because it'll get paid for. I care about you enough to cover you and your needs. That's true community. The world tries to take what we have as community, and we try to put these weird words on it, oh, you're communist, or you're this, or you're that. But the root of that word, community, is the same root that we use for the word communion. We are communing with God. We are saying, I am entering into this intentional moment with the Lord Jesus Christ. That's a big deal. It's so intentional that the Bible even says that if you do it in the wrong manner, you eat and drink the wrath of God into yourself. But we do that all the time. Do it as often as you do it in remembrance of me. But we do it just because it's another thing to do. We've taken the intentionality out of something that is very, very intentional. So think about that when we start doing things in church or even in LTN, as we start to grow and get bigger and things get beyond our control. If we start to spin out of control, we lose community and we lose intentionality. God does not act outside of intentionality, and neither should we. He's not the author of chaos, and that is important to note. So intentionality, it's a big thing. We think we've figured out a pretty good way how to love and serve our nerdy neighbors by really being their friends and doing that intentionally. And the big deal, and I was mentioning this earlier, I was talking with John earlier. He moved. He was sitting over there. He's right there now. I was talking with John earlier before this talk, and we have to be able to befriend people intentionally, even if they're never going to accept Jesus. That's huge, right? Because we've been trained and I do mean trained, conditioned as Christians, that your job is to get somebody into heaven, depending on what denomination or church you go to, by all means necessary. I don't subscribe to that. I think that my job is to be Jesus to somebody at every single point in my life that I can, and that person then has the opportunity to choose whether or not they're going to follow and accept or reject Jesus. My job is not to argue somebody into the kingdom of heaven. We've told you about some of these people. If you've been to conventions with us, we've told you about some of these people that try to do that. It is not effective at all. We had people that would come up to us and they would say, hey, can you go talk to those people out there? And we're like, no. Why would I want to go talk to that person? That is not going to end well. But we've been known, the church really has largely been known by what divides us and not what unites us. What's the Christian church against? What do they stand against? They don't really stand with anybody in anything. We stand against everybody, against everything. You love this thing. That's a sin. We hate it. Like, oh, well, guess who I can never talk to again? Guess what relationship I've absolutely ruined because of the stance that I have to take because this corporate structure says that's what we do. Intentionality builds the relationship that we need in order to share Jesus with people. We need it. 100%. We need to see them as important, really just as they are. And the intentionality comes not from the intent to convert, but simply just to be Jesus, like I said, in every single situation. You're going to fail miserably. Just know that. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be easy. You're going to try, and somebody's going to ask you a really dumb question, and you just know you have the answer. And then they back you into a corner, and you have no way out. Sometimes the best thing to say to somebody when they're trying to trap you is, man, I don't know. And I don't have to know. Even that is an intentional action and thought and word process that you spew out of your mouth hole. You got to think about that, okay? You don't have to, as a Christian, have the answer for every single thing. We have to have the end goal, the end game in mind. Because if I'm not the person that's watering, if I'm not the person that's harvesting, if I'm not the person that's doing whatever step it is, something I say could really screw it up for the next person. Big time. Because they're going to say, well, but this other guy said yada, yada, yada. And now that person has to backtrack and fix all the stuff that I said because I needed to be the smartest person in the room. Again, we've been conditioned as Christians that this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to argue people into heaven and always have an answer. Always. It's not what the Bible says. The Bible says always be willing to give a defense of the hope that lies within you. If you can do that, you're good. It's not to try and get somebody else to come over to your side. And I think that we have a unique joy in that we have board games and video games and comic books and anime and all sorts of stuff because you can start there and go places that you will never imagine. I mean, it's really simple to walk up to somebody and to look at their shirt and they've got a Ninja Turtle on it and go, what's your favorite Ninja Turtle? You have an instant connection with that person. If you walk up to that person and say, hey, man, how's your relationship with Jesus? You have an instant disconnection with that person. You know, like there is a time and a place for those talks, but it's not the very first time. It's just not. So you have to think intentionally about what you're trying to do and how you're trying to get there. So this is a big deal for me. With people that you don't know or that don't know you, you're going to hear us talk about this a lot. You have to earn that right to speak truth in their life. You do not, I don't care what your background is, how many times you've been to church that Sunday, nobody cares. Like, you do not have the right to speak that into their life. Unless you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that God is calling you to go and talk to that person, it may fall on deaf ears, and just be ready for that. Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean that you have the silver bullet to get right through to that point. That's not how it works. The deal is, people cannot be projects to you. People are people. Just like you, There is a bunch of stuff that happens in their life every single day. Their kids throw up in the car. Matt. Their kid kicks a window out. Bubba. We always talk about it, hey, you guys got in a fight on your way to church, and then you try and fake it for Sunday morning, and then there are a bunch of different circumstances in every single person's life that leads up to the moment that you see them. But we're supposed to act like everything's okay, everything's fine, and I'm just going to get my agenda across to you, and you're going to get yours across to me, and we're going to part ways, hopefully on amicable terms. That's not how it works. People have things that go on in their lives, so we can't just see them as projects. We have to see them as people. We have to see them as people that Jesus died for, that I am talking to you for a reason. Everything in your life has led up to that moment right there. If you ever wonder, God, why am I here? What am I doing? What is your purpose for me? That's what I like to think. I just come back to every single moment in my life has led up to this moment right here. Don't screw it up. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes it goes south. But people are people too. Intentionality comes from not the intent to convert, but simply just to be Jesus in every single situation. And people are not projects. They're absolutely people. Regardless of the circumstance, they need to know that they matter to you. If a person thinks that they don't matter to you, you don't matter to them. I mean, you see it every day in politics. If any kind of people group thinks that person on the screen doesn't care about them, they don't care about that person. Relationships are reciprocal, right? A healthy relationship is reciprocal. Jesus loves us unconditionally. Sometimes I don't get that. A lot of times I don't get that. That Jesus loves me because I know what I'm like when nobody's around. Oftentimes I say that it's not what a man does in public that makes him who he is. It's what he does in secret. Like, what do I do when nobody's around? And I know what I'm like when nobody's around. I do. You know what you're like when nobody's around. We're really good about putting on a face. But Jesus loves us anyway. But a lot of times we don't love the people around us because of the choices they make. And that immediately breaks your connection with them. You lose the right to speak truth into their life. You lose the right to show them that Jesus can cover all of that. At conventions, we hear all the time, we hear ridiculous things like, Jesus wouldn't want me. You don't know what I've done. I don't care what you've done. I know that Jesus wants you. I'm too gay for Jesus. That doesn't make any sense. I'm too Jewish. I had somebody tell me that one time, and I was like, well, Jesus was Jewish, so I think you're fine. I think you're good. Jesus, I like to say that Jesus loves absolutely every single person on the face of the planet. It's not up to me to decide who he does and does not love, because John 3:16 tells me he died for everybody. That's not my job. My job is to spread the seed as far as it'll go. It's going to fall on fresh and unfertile soil. That's not my job. My job is to do what he told me to do, not to be the stick of discernment. I'll let him do that. And the one way that I do that is to help people understand that they matter to me is just by loving them, asking them questions. I am the worst. Every time we go to conventions, not every time, but most times, I have a badge that says media on it. That's just an excuse for Matt and I to get in the door early. Like, we are terrible. We are absolutely terrible at media, because we'll stand at a booth and we'll take the whole hour and we're just like, hey, man, what's going on? How was your move? Like, I saw you went to Disneyland on Facebook. Like, what's that about? And they're like trying to sell their product and get it out in the public. I've never once published anything that anybody's told me at a media hour. Like, I'm terrible at it, because I use the gifts that I have and the podcasts that we have and the outlets that we have to build further relationships with people, because that means so much more than any article we could ever write for them. They need to know that they care, so that when something happens in their organization or their life, they look to us. Not because I need people to look to me, but this is where God has me. This is me doing something while I'm doing absolutely nothing. A convention, we are walking around looking for people to talk to. That's it. We'll sit down and play games to start conversations with people. Hey, you got a new game out. That's cool. You want to teach me how to play it? Of course you do. This is your job. That was easy. Let's play a game. And then we get to ask them questions about it. And it's really simple. Once somebody sits down to play a game with you, you can start saying, hey, where are you from? What do you do? You got a family? Oh, man, I got 3 kids. It's great. You from around here? I mean, it's so easy. It's fishing with dynamite if you put the time in. If you put the time and energy in. So people need to know that you matter. People need to know that they matter to you. They don't care if you matter. They need to know that they matter to you. And at that point, you will earn the right to speak truth into their life. I'm going to let you guys in a little secret. So talk about being Jesus in every situation and all this stuff. And one of the ways that I do that, and I think I coined this phrase because, well, I haven't Googled it yet, but I think I came up with it. I like to use the phrase passive discipleship. I don't know, maybe you know what that means. Maybe it makes sense in your brain. But this means that I'm going to continue to be Jesus at every single moment that I possibly can, and you are going to be discipled by me, whether you like it or not. Like, it's not forcibly passive discipleship, but if I do what I'm supposed to be doing, you are going to be discipled by the things that I'm doing. Like that's a big deal, because if we're called to go and make disciples, we think that we have to have people like this in a room taking notes. They've got to come to our church on Sunday. They got to do all these things. We got to check all these boxes. But that doesn't have to be the case, because we can teach people things about who Jesus is and why Jesus does the things that he does just by being a Christian. The Bible says that they will know that you are my disciples, not by the shirts that you wear. Again, go over to the merch booth, buy our shirts. Not by the church that you go to, not by the shows that you watch or don't watch, and the music that you listen to or don't listen to. It says that they will know that you are my disciples by the love that you have for one another. So when I'm around somebody who somebody else says, this person is terrible, can you believe what this person did? This person sucks. I'm like, I want to go talk to that person. I want to go hang out with that person, because it sounds like there are other people that think the same way that you do about that person. What an opportunity for me to go and be Jesus to that person. And I hope they ask me if I'm a Christian. Man, if they ask me if I'm a Christian, that kicks the door wide open and I can say whatever I want. But I don't start there, because that's not my place. I have not earned that right yet. It's a discipline, though. It really is. It's worth the time to practice this, even in the small things, so that you are going to be effective in passive discipleship in the big things. Because passive discipleship, it's like I said, it's not active. Like this just has to be who you are and what rolls out of you. If you are consciously trying to make the right decision the whole time, you need to go pray a little bit more, because there's something wrong in your life. If you are constantly having to choose to make the right decision, there's a little bit that needs to happen in your spiritual life. And I've been there. I understand it. I completely get it. But when we are Jesus all the time, people will catch it. People will ask the dumb question, why are you the way you are? Why do you do that? Why don't you want to come do this thing with me? Why don't you do these things that we do? It's just not what God's called me to do, man. Like, you can go ahead and do that. We shouldn't expect people to live by our rules. That's not fair to them. Fair is a really weird word, but I'm going to use it here. It's not fair to hold somebody to my standard. It's not. Once they come into the fold, once they are a part of the body, then yes, we can hold them to that. The whole judge not lest ye be judged thing, it's totally taken out of context, because you can judge people inside of the body. That's iron sharpening iron. That's what we're called to do in order to keep the mission on a straight line. And that's why we say, if you see us doing stuff that you don't think is right within the scope of LTN, please let us know. Like, hey, you guys said at LTN Con that you were going to do this, and you guys did not do that even close. You went and did this other thing. Tell me about that. Accountability builds intentional community. I like to use the word accountability buddy. So find somebody who's going to keep you accountable. Accountability buddy. Yeah, makes sense. You're just sad you didn't think of it. That's what it was. Like, it's fine. It's fine. So the kicker here is that you can't passively disciple people if you're not around them. Does that make sense? Oh man, that was a tough one to write down. You just can't. So like in a gaming context, this may mean that you are in a Destiny raid that just goes on forever, and you keep wiping time after time after time, and you're 5 hours into it, and you haven't even passed the first room yet. I think we've been there together. For playing a board game, it may mean that you get locked into a game that you just don't care about. You could not care any less about it. It is scientifically impossible for you to care any less about the game that you're playing right now. But somebody else wants to play that game. So exactly. For me, it was the game of life about 2 weeks ago, and my daughter wanted to play that game, and I just could not break her little heart. I told her this was our last turn, and she literally spun the dial and then walked away. She didn't even see what was going on. No. We finished the game. That's what I'm saying. But I told her this is the last turn, and she spun the dial and walked away. So she wasn't even invested. She didn't care. Exactly. Yeah, I want to so bad. I hate that game. But that's for me. Not every game is for every person. But I find this a lot, especially online with MMOs. You spend hours and hours and hours and hours, and people get bored. They get frustrated because you can't get through something. People walk by and say, "It's just a game. Like, what's the matter with you?" And you're like, "It's not a game. It's my life, bro. Like, this has been the last 8 hours of my life trying to clear this room." So it means something to them. Knowing how much it means to that other person, if you can, stay. You will be surprised at how far that will take you. I'm speaking from personal experience on that, especially within Destiny. We actually started with Game Church. We wanted to start building an online ministry through Destiny alone because that crap happens all the time. People will walk away from you because you don't have the right equipment, or people will stop playing with you because you don't do anything, or because your character is trash, or you don't have the right gear. Things that are completely out of your control, they will leave you alone in that game. And for people that really don't feel any self-worth, which a lot of people that play online games don't feel self-worth in their home. They don't feel appreciated at their job. Maybe their wife is cheating on them, or their husband's cheating on them, and this is the only thing they have that brings worth and value to their life. And people are even leaving them there. Let that sink in. Again, people are people. There are circumstances leading up to the moment where you're playing a dumb video game with them. And when you go, "Man, you suck. I'm out of here," you ruin that person. You may go on to another group that then clears that raid in 15 minutes or whatever, but now that person's left with the scar of what you said. People matter. People are people too. And you can't passively disciple them if they're not there. So through the medium and circumstances, and though they may change, the fact remains the same. It will not always be fun, but it will be rewarding. I've had to bow out of a few raids before. Like, hey, it's 3 a.m., I got a kid that's going to be up in like 6 minutes. Like, I got to try and get some sleep. Is it cool if I bow out? I'm not rage quitting. I'm asking permission to leave. Like, is it okay with you if I bow out of this? But there's a way that you can kind of save a little bit of face. So if you're having a hard time coming up with ideas of how to do intentional community, come and talk to us. Like I said, we've been doing this specifically for almost 7 years now, a lot of us. We can help you find ways in your community, in your gaming community, online, whatever it is, whatever game you're a part of, we can help you find ways to intentionally engage in koinonia with people and to let them know that they matter. This requires persistent intentionality, by the way. It's important that when engaging in relational evangelism, that you know that you're dealing with real people. I know I keep saying that, but it bears repeating over and over and over again. People are people too. It's super important. And the way that you have interacted with somebody in the past does not mean that that's going to be the same way that you interact with them in the future. So if somebody goes away and they were your friend in high school and they go away to college and then you guys don't meet again until 5 years down the line when they've graduated, that's 5 years of experience that person has had without you there. That's 5 years of things that they have gone through that you have no idea about. I'll give you a personal example. There's a missionary family in our church that went away. And I say went away, they went and moved to Honduras. Great friends of ours. I'm on their advocacy team. It's wonderful. I love them to death. I'm a highly sarcastic person. You're not seeing it a lot in this talk because this is really important stuff that we're dealing with here. But if you've ever listened to the Free Play podcast, you know that it's true. But they went away, and a lot of how I break awkward silence is just by saying stupid stuff and being, sarcastic and, trying to predict if somebody's having a baby or whatever, just dumb stuff. And so the deal of it is that they went away and they came back and they went through a bunch of stuff. Like they were back in the States on what's known as furlough, to come and raise support and, get, medical care and all sorts of stuff. And I was my same dumb self with them, but they were not at a point in their life where they needed that. They needed somebody to ask them how they were doing. They needed somebody to care about the things that they were doing and that they were going through. And I didn't. This was 2 weeks ago. And happened on a Sunday. And he was in my office. The husband was in my office the very next day on Monday. And he said, I need you to know that if God was not in my life, this would not be a good altercation that we're having, because I had done something that made his wife and family not want to be in the building. And I had no idea that I did it. Because I was taking the past experiences that we had had, not thinking that anything had led up to that point to change any circumstance. I knew that they were getting all sorts of stuff done and that things were hard for them. But because I thought I'll cut the awkwardness with sarcasm. It didn't work. It didn't work at all. It the opposite of worked. And I apologized profusely to him. I sent personal apologies to his wife, all 3 of his kids. I wanted him to know that he mattered to me and that I loved him and I loved his family. And I would do anything and had done a lot of things. But in that moment, when you cut somebody down, when you take their legs from out underneath them, you never cared about them. We start talking in like superlatives, always and never, like you're always this way and you never care about me. If you've ever had a fight with your spouse, that's usually how they go. Or your boyfriend or girlfriend or your brother or sister, who cares? That's usually how it goes, is we start talking in superlatives. And that's what happened. And that's a real life thing for me that I had to deal with in the last 2 weeks. And it made me think specifically about this, that I was being unintentional with my community with them. I had told them that they mattered to me, but I never proved it to them. The things that I said and I did actually proved the opposite, that they didn't matter to me, that they were just another person that came into church that I could have small talk and whatever with, when our relationship is deeper than that. So I had to go back and do all these things. These micro interactions are really stopgaps. There are some very practical applications that we can do through online community, because we think that our online community is pretty good. I'm pretty partial to it. We have almost 2,000 members in our online community, which is a lot of people, and we try and cut off the top and the bottom and keep the middle. We're cutting all the crust off the PB&J in our online community. Like, we want just the good stuff. So we don't really want people to have oversaved content, like, hey, share this and, Mary will bless your family or whatever. And we don't want to have the bottom stuff, which is all the vulgarity that, League of Legends and, all those PC Master Race and all this stuff. Like, there's a lot of toxicity in gaming. We want to cut all that off the bottom and all that off the top so that we can create what we call the lobby. When people come in, they feel comfortable in the lobby. And our moderation team has to mod a bunch of stuff. We have to mod it from people that we love. I mean, look, man, this is not the place for that, because that doesn't hit what we're trying to hit. I know you're a Christian, and you want everybody in this room to be a Christian, and so do I, and it's really great. But that is not what we're here to do. We're here to create a safe space where you and somebody who doesn't care about anything that you care about other than gaming can hang out and create relationships and build intentionality. So that soft space, that middle, is how we do it. And it's a place where we gave where are you at? There he is. We gave Michael Brown here an award at our banquet for our fellowship group. That was, what do we call it? Dustin, you did it. Like it's your job. Like it's your freaking job, I think is what you said. Yeah. So, I mean, like getting in there and posting memes and stupid pictures and funny GIFs and stuff like that, like that is like sweet spot for us because that's high engagement. That gets people who love Jesus and could not care any less about Jesus in the same comment thread. If you ever wonder why that's what the community is like, that's why. We're trying to hit a sweet spot so we can bring people together. I want to create awkward moments for people to encounter Jesus. In a side group, because of a bunch of comments that they made on Michael's GIF or something like that, where they start talking in a messenger group, and now they're sharing prayer requests, and my mom's going through this, and I can't believe my family, and all this stuff. Like now you're getting into the nitty-gritty, the real stuff. When people openly share stuff like that in our community, I ask them if they would do it in a side group. Have you put forth the effort to find people that you can confide in? And I don't expect everybody to do that. I really don't. Because, like I said, relationships are work. But in a community of almost 2,000 people and growing, we have to kind of police that a little bit. We want everyone to feel like they can come and hang out with us. No strings attached, just games and a good time and a bunch of passive discipleship. So think about that when you're in our community, specifically when you're in our community and somebody posts something really stupid and you think it's just a dumb thing to say. Think about what you're posting in the comment section. And then think about it when you're not in a Christian environment, when anonymity is king and you can say whatever you want on the internet. Some person may not know who you are, but your words still hurt and they still cut. So it's important that you understand everywhere that you go, whether somebody can see your face or not, that person is a person. It's not a robot. We like to say all the time for internet stuff that pixels are people too. So think about that. This is the atmosphere that we're trying to create, and it's really, really, really important. It's super important. So how do we do this? How do we do intentional community? Remembering that people are people too. It's very important that we understand how we can effectively do this. Here's some things that I will give you. You're not the only person that matters. You're just not. This is something that me and my 7-year-old go around and around and around about. Like, bud, you are not king of the hill right now. Not for a long time will you be king of the hill. But he acts in ways that ruin everybody else's day. You'll get to meet him. He's a sweet kid, love him to death. But he acts in ways that ruin everybody else's day because he's not feeling like he's the most important person. And so that's the biggest struggle that we go through. And I have that same conversation with adults. How crazy is that? You're not the most important person in the room. And as Christians, we shouldn't be. We are called to put others before us. First shall be last, and the last shall be first. We know that. It's real quippy, but do we think about it? Like, are we really thinking about what that means and how to actually implement that in a daily thing? Like, it's sacrifice. Like, somebody wants to do something that I don't want to do. For me, it's usually every day of my life that people want to do things that I don't want to do because I'm a selfish human being because of the sin nature that I have. I want to do things that make me happy. I want to do things that are going to benefit me. What's my ROI on my time or my money? But I have to understand that I'm not the most important person in the world, and especially not in that room. I have to show interest in things that are interesting to other people, and not pander them. Like, I have to actually be interested in the things that they're interested in. I got to learn new games. I got to watch their favorite movie. In doing so, you'll have something to talk to them about, like I said. Like, for instance, People were all up in arms about Spider-Man being outside of the MCU and like, oh, it's great or it sucks, and oh, Sony's going to be so awesome now. Spider-Man's great. And then Spider-Man came back into the MCU, and everybody's like, finally, it's so awesome. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You were just mad. What happened? But you immediately have an understanding. We went and saw Joker the other day, and we talked about Joker for an hour-ish more, if you count at the theater. Like, you immediately have this connection with people. You may not care about it. I've never played Dungeons and Dragons. But I can't wait. But I can't wait to play the Wendy's RPG. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But seriously, I've never played D&D, but I know enough about it to hold a conversation. Show interest in things that other people are interested about. The beauty of games is you don't have to know everything or care about everything, but it's important to know the things that are hot. All the milkshakes. Milkshakes are things that bring all the boys to the yard. Here's a big one. This is a huge one. This one's super hyper practical. If you don't get anything else out of this, learn their freaking name. People's names are really important to them. And I know that because I have one. And when somebody calls me Matt, I'm like, none taken, but it's Bubba. Yeah. No, I mean, that's a big deal for me because I meet so many people all the time that I'm like, oh gosh, you have a name and it's really important to you, and I can't remember it right now. I'm going to wait until somebody else says it. Tactic. That's a pro tip. Write it down. Wait till somebody else says their name. This is perfect. We have badges, so just wait till it flips. Like, it's cool, all right? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, be intentional about it. People want to know. Don't get into the habit of calling somebody buddy or buckaroo or chum. Learn their freaking name. It's important. Yeah, hey, champ. We already talked about being there for them often. Here's a big one. Send them encouraging messages on Facebook. If you see that somebody went to Disneyland, go, hey, cool, I love Disneyland. Who cares? They think that you're thinking about them, and you are because you took the time to write the message. Facebook loves to tell you what their birthday is. Wish them a happy birthday. Here's another pro tip. Don't say happy birthday. Look at your wall on your birthday. Everybody is just like, Facebook said it's your birthday. Happy birthday. I take the time, even when I get birthday cards and all sorts of stuff, to write something meaningful in that message. What's something that this person and I, what's an inside joke we have? What's something that we connect with? Maybe it's a funny gift that only they will get. Some obscure office reference. Something like that. What's something that I can do that makes that person feel special? That stands out. Intentionality. Simply telling somebody happy birthday on Facebook is not intentional. You got to take it another step further. You need to find specific ways to love and serve your nerdy neighbors. I don't know what that looks like for you. Hopefully in a conversation, we can figure that out. I don't know what it is, but you do. Right now, you're thinking of somebody in your area that you could love and serve. Just do it. Let me empower you. Do it. If you need help, come talk to us. Let us help you. But let me go back and say it again. Do it. You are free now to go and love and serve that person however God leads you to do so. Intentionally. Invite people to your things. Do not be cliquey. It's actually one of our rules, so don't do it. Invite people to your stuff. Hey, I'm having a game night. Hey, I'm going to the movies. Hey, I'm going to be at the park with my kids or whatever. Invite people to come and hang out with you. You're a pretty cool person to hang out with, so invite people to come experience Jesus through you. Know that about yourself. The truth is this, that, how do I say this? The truth is this, that Jesus is not the bridge. Jesus is the truth. He's on the other side of the cavern. And you have to earn the right to speak truth into somebody's life. So if somebody's over here and you need to get them to here and there's a big, huge gap, you've got to build a bridge to get across, a bridge to Terabithia. But except it's Jesus on the other side. You've got to get them across. And the deal is that the larger the truth, the heavier, the weightier the truth, the stronger the bridge needs to be. And the bridge is relationships. If I'm going to get somebody who is so far away from Jesus across a very wide gap that they cannot just jump across, I've got to spend the time and the effort and the energy to build that bridge. You ever watch anybody build a bridge before? Like maybe in your area, they demolished a bridge in my town and rebuilt it, and it was the most fascinating thing to watch. It took forever to build that thing. But, I mean, you can drive several Amelia Bedelia cars over it, and it's not coming down. It's solid, you know? And, like, so if we're trying to get people across to Jesus, we've got to build that bridge that will hold that. And your relationship through intentionality is that. So you need to find specific ways to do that. You become a traveling place where people can encounter God when you do this. When you are always passively discipling people, when you're always being Jesus in every single situation that you possibly can, anywhere that you are is an awkward place for somebody to encounter Jesus. You're like the tabernacle. I mean, the Spirit of God lives within you. If you're a Christian and you buy into all that, the power and the Spirit of God lives within you, and you are a traveling tabernacle, so that wherever you are, so there is the Spirit of God. You guys are super important. So when you don't act with intentionality, with the power that lives inside of you, you're throwing it away. I throw it away all the time. Don't be like me most of the time. Be better. Figure out ways to create awkward encounters for Jesus. This can happen by, like I said, playing a game with them. People will love you because you played a game with them, or you saw value in them, or did something when nobody else would. Speaking of D&D, and then I'll close here, is that people will say a lot of the times, and they'll devalue people. They'll even use the Bible to do it, especially with games. Put away childish things. It's more than that. Like I said, when a person doesn't feel value in their day-to-day life, and they're trying to escape to a place where they're the healer of their group, and every group needs a healer. I love playing healers because you always find a group. But they find value in whatever it is that they're playing, whatever role that they're playing as part of that team, and especially with Dungeons & Dragons, because it is such a team-oriented thing. Everybody's making decisions that are affecting the team, and people are looking out for their best interest because you need all your party members most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. So when you turn to somebody and say, your hobby is stupid and it's sinful, and you need to stop doing it, you're taking the last little piece of value out of that person's life. And you don't have the opportunity to put Jesus in that place. It's not how it works. So remember that your words matter. Think about what Jesus would do in that situation. And in every single situation, Jesus would turn around and go, yeah, let's hang out. Love it. Tax collectors, sinners, whatever. Let's go. So find ways to intentionally engage in koinonia, intentional fellowship with other Christians and also people that are outside of the way that you think and believe. Because I think that makes us better. I try and surround myself, not all the time, but I try and surround myself with people that I think completely different from me. Because I think it makes me better. Helps me understand the world around me a little bit more. So, find awkward places to show people that they matter to you, so that you matter to them, so that you can build a relational bridge that gets them to Jesus. And just know that you can do it. I promise you can.